Before you watch the video, make sure you check out my full digital SAT math and verbal section video courses. These are the #1 rated video courses on Udemy, and I'm sure they're going to help you during your SAT prep. In this session, I am going to familiarize you with Desmos Calculator. This is going to be a very insightful session, so I suggest you to follow this, and if you have any concerns or any ideas, or maybe you like something, then write it down, take note, and of course, try to learn it with me, because whatever you learn in this session is going to save you tons of time in SAT math. A good and a bad score in SAT mathematics, they differ in the fact that one student could take their time in every single question, not rush and not use the shortcuts, while the other student could solve questions more effectively, efficiently, use the tools, the correct tools, and of course verify their solutions. And one way to, let's say, solve questions efficiently is the tool that you see on your screen now, the Desmos Calculator. This calculator existed before the Bluebook application introduced it to the SAT. Also, this calculator has been used by me during my bachelor studies several years ago, and I found it very useful back in the day. So today I want to share everything I know about it with you, and of course, we're going to apply it to some SAT scenarios. So first of all, you can access this calculator not only in the Bluebook application, but online by typing www.desmos.com/calculator. And this is a graphing calculator, but also a normal calculator. If you plot a function here, or if you just write y is equal to x, let's say, then it's going to graph something for you. But if you make some basic arithmetic calculations, then it could also reveal the answer. So this calculator is going to, on the context of SAT, it is going to look like this. It's going to be like a small part of your screen on the exam, and you could access it by pressing the calculator button in your Bluebook interface. And this calculator is used both with your keyboard if you're using a computer on your exam, or with the virtual keyboard that you could access with this keyboard button if you're using an iPad. Now, I suggest taking the SATs on a laptop computer. This is because with the keyboard, the math section is way smoother. It is way easier to type things into the windows here in the Desmos calculator using a real keyboard. Now, let me tell you about some features of Desmos calculator. Let's go over them one by one. The first thing is that you can solve, let's say, basic arithmetic problems with Desmos calculator. You could divide things, you could add, you could multiply, and of course subtract. You could also do some more complex operations by opening parentheses and writing things following the chronology of the question. For instance, they could tell you to simplify this expression, and you could write it all down into Desmos correctly, and then it finds the answer. You could also add fractions in your expressions or overall solutions. So Desmos is basically an arithmetic tool, okay? The answer is always displayed here on the bottom right corner of the window within which you are writing your, let's say, expressions. But what you can do is you can always add many expressions. There is no limit to how many expressions you can add, I believe. And when you're done with the question, or you don't need the expression on your screen anymore, you can always close them. If you close something by accident, you could either press Control Z on your Windows computer, or I believe Command Z on your Mac computer. Hoping that I'm not wrong, but however you bring things back on the Mac computer, that's how you can bring them on Desmos. But of course, there are also some arrows here that can bring back the things that you have closed by accident. Now, Desmos Calculator as a graphing tool is a great and useful way of plotting functions on the SAT and quickly solving some questions. So if you're having a, let's say, a quadratic equation question, which you might have seen by now if you're following the modules chronologically, then you might just enter the quadratic equation into the Desmos calculator directly. And what it's going to do is it's going to plot it for you, and you could see the roots of that function. So in this case, the roots are not real because this quadratic equation does not cross the x-axis. But if you do something like this, then you could easily see the roots. You could also see the y-intercept, and you could see the vertex of your parabola. And that's the great thing. Desmos Calculator is a very smart one, and it understands that you might be interested either in the roots if you are dealing with a quadratic equation, or with the y-intercept, or you're going to be dealing with the vertex. So it gives you the coordinates. You can always bring the coordinates to your, let's say, solution windows. You could label them, you could call them something, let's say first root. But you don't necessarily have time for that on the exam, so you don't need to do that. If you want to, you can practice this at home. So all you have to do is you just bring your mouse close to your parabola, and all these points pop out. Then you click on one of them, and click on this little export point to expression list function. Once we click on that, it comes here, and you can already see that it has also a color label. And what you can do is you can hide that point, or you can bring it back. You see, it disappeared and appeared again. And by clicking on the label box here, you can give that point a name. Anyway, that might not be as useful as being able to see the solutions of your, let's say, systems of equations. What you can do on Desmos is you can plot 2 equations, 3 equations, 4 equations, infinitely many lines or plots or curves on the same plot, and then you will see where they intersect. And of course, the intersection or the solution points can also be here noted. Great. So far, so good. What else you can do with Desmos is you can hide the functions that you're not interested in seeing anymore. And of course, the other thing that you can do here is plot inequalities. So far we have only seen equations, but let's just write one linear inequality. Let's say y is greater than something. I know how to do the greater sign on my keyboard, but if you don't know, then you can always bring back that pop-up keyboard. And here you're going to have shortcuts with all the mathematical symbols you might need on the SAT. So let's in fact say y is greater than or equal to something. So you see the Desmos calculator plots the line, the linear equation with the slope 2 and the y-intercept 3, and then it plots you the solution region containing all the points that satisfy the inequality that you have written here. You can, of course, hide it and bring it back if you want to. More importantly, Desmos calculator can show you also the y and the x-intercepts of that line. And as I believe, I'm not sure about it, but I think we could also plot points here. You see that? We can do that. So if you're solving a linear inequality question and they give you an inequality and they ask you if this point satisfies that inequality, you could quickly plot it in your exam, and then you could see if indeed that works, okay? So let's do something different. Let's say 20. So take a look. The red point satisfies the inequality, and therefore it could be your solution on the exam. And again, if you don't know how to do parentheses on a computer keyboard, then you can always use the parentheses here, right? But be careful about what you write in here and make sure that you get familiarized with this keyboard. Solve a couple of questions here. I always suggest students to get their hands onto the keyboard and do some practice. This is not even just a light suggestion. Let me tell you, this is a must. You should, before the exam, get familiarized with the tools that you have. Because I've seen so many times that the student does not get familiarized with the tool, and on the exam they have a problem just finding the keyboard, or they have a problem writing something correctly because they do not know how to say x to the power of 3. So how do you do x to the power of 3? Let's now go to expressions. To write x to the power of 3, what you have to do is just write x and then press this button here, and it will give you an exponent. And here you could write whatever you want. You could even open a parenthesis and say x minus 1 or minus 2, and it gives you a very funny looking curve here. Desmos is smart, as I said, so you don't really need to write y is equal to something. It already understands that you are saying y is equal to x to the power of x minus 2. So whenever you're solving some quadratic equation questions or linear equation questions, then you don't necessarily have to write y is equal to something. However, if you want to say f of x, just because the question says f of x, because you might have some questions where they give you two functions, f of x and let's say g of x, then you can always feel free to write these things correctly so that you can differentiate between your given graphs and not make any silly mistakes on the exam. So as you can see here, we see g of x as the red line and f of x as the black line. Now, coming to statistics, if you remember in the median, mean, and mode and range questions, I have shown you that you can actually find the mean of a set of numbers by typing mean and opening up parentheses and writing that set of numbers in random order. You don't need to change the order from least to greatest in both median and mean calculations on Desmos. And that is going to give you the mean of your set of numbers. This is a very convenient way because otherwise you would have to enter everything and then divide by the number of how many numbers you have here. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So by counting that, we already lost a lot of seconds. And sometimes we might make some miscalculations or wrong calculations. So using that mean function of Desmos has proven to be a time saver on the exam. The same thing you can do with the median, and finding the median by hand is a bit more difficult because you have to order the numbers from least to greatest. And you don't have to do that here. Desmos Calculator can find you the median of a set of numbers, even when the numbers are entered into it randomly. So not from least to greatest, but in a random order. Let's see if you can do that with the range. So let me just enter a set of numbers here. It seems like we can't do that with the range. Yeah, so don't try that on the exam. And if you are interested in all the functions that Desmos Calculator has, then they're all here. All those functions that later you might need in your university, or some functions that you might need on the SAT, they're all here. Now, I'm not going to go over the more complex functions. I'm only going to go over the essential functions, and you have seen already some statistical functions. So let's continue with statistics. What you can do sometimes is you can plot a scatter plot on Desmos. And the way you do this is by clicking that plus button here. And on the SAT, you're only going to, I think, see two options, expression and table. So what you have to press is table, and you can enter the coordinates of a scatter plot. And what it's going to do is going to plot that scatter plot for you, okay? So let me quickly do that. That's not really beautiful. Let's say 0, 0. So take a look at that scatter plot. Now, do you want to see the line of best fit through that scatter plot? If you want to, you can do that because Desmos Calculator not only draws the scatter plots when you press that plus button and click on table and enter the coordinates, but it can also extrapolate, add a regression, or in other words, in the words that you already know, add the line of best fit. And you can already see the equation of the line of best fit, the y-intercept and the slope. Isn't that amazing? Make sure you choose linear regression, which is called the line of best fit. But if you choose something else, then it's going to give you something else. A quadratic regression would give you a parabola of best fit, a parabola that fits those points the best. Just know that Desmos Calculator offers this, let's say, amenity that is great in questions where you need to find the line of best fit through a set of points, or where you need to just plot scatter plots and decide something about them. Amazing. And now we're going to also continue with some geometrical or trigonometrical functions. So Desmos Calculator can also find sine, cosine, and tangent of different numbers. If you don't know what sine, cosine, and tangent are, we're going to see them in further modules. But in any case, I want to show you that if you write sine 30 here, or let's say sine pi over 6. So sinus of pi over 6 radians, whenever you enter, instead of angles in degrees, angles in radians, then Desmos Calculator can give you the sine, the trigonometric function sine of that angle in radians. If you don't want to enter angles in radians, and if you want to enter angles in degrees into trigonometric functions, then you can always go to the settings. Take a look here. You're going to have this button on the SAT as well. So you can go to settings and choose degrees here. So radians, degrees. And what Desmos does is, instead of calculating sine in radians, it will now calculate sine in degrees. So if you might know, probably you know already if you took some high school courses, but if you don't, then I'll explain it in further modules as well. 30 degrees is pi over 6 radians. And all of that is going to be explained in geometry sessions. And if you have chosen degrees in your settings in Desmos Calculator, then by writing sine 30, you're going to get your answer of sinus of 30 degrees and not radians. You can also write cosine or tangent. All these necessary trigonometric functions exist in the Desmos Calculator. Now, these were some basic shortcuts of Desmos. I suggest you to get your hands on it and to do some practice. More importantly, I suggest you to always strive to understand whether you need to use Desmos Calculator or not on the SAT. I'll give you a hint. Sometimes they give us circles, all right? So what is a circle? The circle equation is going to be also explained in one of the modules, but just keep this in mind. Sometimes on the SAT, you get some circle equation questions. And sometimes imagining that equation or imagining that circle and drawing it on a piece of paper is hard. So what you could do is you could plot it, plot the equation, the Desmos, and you could judge that circle. You could see its range, you could see its domain, you could see how many, where the center is and what the radius is. What you could also do is you could say, oh, what happens if I shift the circle 5 units to the left? 5 units shifting to the left means you take the same circle, and you will also see it in the further modules, but you will learn now as well. So if you want to shift something to the left, you add something to the x variable. So I shifted the circle 5 units to the left, and as you can see, it crosses the y-axis symmetrically. So you can do that on Desmos. You can do graph shifting. Let me close the circles. I don't want to see them anymore. I want to see a parabola, but I'm going to write it unusually because, as I'll explain in further videos, you can actually shift parabolas as well. So let's say I have a parabola like this, and let's say I want to shift it 5 units to the right, then I will have to subtract 5 from the x variable in the parentheses. And if I do that, my parabola actually shifts to the right. Now remember, this was my original parabola, and now I shifted it 5 units to the right. So you see, you can do all type of things in Desmos Calculator. They could also give you a scenario like this. They could say, there is a circle and there is a parabola in the plot. What are the solutions of the circle and the parabola? What are the solutions of the system of equations? Well, the solutions are the points where they cross each other, right? And here they are. And finding this on paper by hand is close to impossible on the SAT. Like, it's gonna take you a while. But doing this on Desmos takes you seconds. Therefore, remember that this tool is for you. Use it on the exam. Also bring your own hand calculator, just in case if you're used to doing basic arithmetic calculations by hand. But if you have a graphing question, and if it's a very specific factual question where you need the graph, then graph your function and solve the question with no problem. So thanks for watching. Again, practice makes perfect. So get your hands dirty with the Desmos calculator, practice a bit, and I'll see you in the next one.